Webcasting from Southeast Kansas, I'm Jonathan Switzer. Let me start this by stating the obvious. These are not the circumstances under which I wanted to republish this interview. I had been planning on republishing some of these phone interviews I had done for my mid-aughts Robotech blog for a few years now. Like so many things, though, it's one of those projects that, for one reason or another, kept falling by the wayside. For starters, most of those interviews are tied up in the pre-release hype cycle for Robotech The Shadow Chronicles, and are thus interesting to pretty much no one in 2016. I think it's really only the last couple of interviews I did that are more timeless, as they're chats with folks who were there back in the day, whether that day be the production of the Robotech television series in the 1980s, or that period in the 1990s where Robotech was functionally a series of black and white comics and role-playing game sourcebooks. The latter is the case for the subject of this interview. Bruce Lewis, author of 11 of the most idiosyncratic, politically charged, and divisive Robotech comics published in the history of the franchise. Infinite War Aftermath was an altogether different take on what happened in the years following the Third Robotech War, pitting the members of Scott Bernard's band of freedom fighters against one another in a quest for survival in the post-apocalyptic, post-Robotech world. They're the sorts of licensed comics no sane person would sign off on today. Deeply personal and tonally at odds with the entire publishing range up to that point, borrowing the visual language and style of Japanese girls' comics rather than the typical meat-and-potatoes faux anime look of most Japanese-influenced comics of the time. And for that, even when the art is rough as hell, the writing a bit wonky, and even when the story completely derails at the end in a fit of disinterest, I still love those comics. Now, as to the circumstance I alluded to at the outset. The fact of the matter is, Bruce Lewis passed away this past Sunday, May 15th, 2016, at the age of 51. What you're about to listen to is a chat I had with him on August 9th, 2007, about Robotech, the wider world of anime and manga, and what it was like to work on Robotech comics in the 1990s.
Let's start with, where and when did you first encounter anime and manga?
I grew up with it. My mother's brother, my uncle, is married to a Japanese lady who he met after World War II. Since her sons, my three cousins, lived, there, I used to spend every summer with them, and she always had, anime and manga lying around, and so, it was always around me when I was growing up, and, that was really, my first exposure to it. This was back in the late 1960s, early 1970s.
Oh, long way back.
Yeah, I'm old.
So can you identify what your first anime or first manga, or at least the first one that really caught your eye was?
Yeah, the first anime I ever saw, I remember very well. It used to come on Channel 11 in Dallas. It would have been 1969. And on our black and white Philco TV, I used to watch Eighth Man. The one that was brought over here, I believe, by, I think, was it Fred Ladd who brought that over here? I think it was. It was either Fred Ladd or Peter Fernandez. But that's the first anime I ever watched was Eighth Man. And the first manga I can remember seeing was Osomatsu-kun, which is one of those. It was sort of like The Simpsons, only it was way back in the 70s, and it was a lot more ribald than The Simpsons. I remember in one episode, the dad, he has a shrewish wife, and I don't know what he did to her, but he sort of forms her into a urinal, and then they all get their jollies watching people piss in her mouth, which, my mom didn't think was very funny, but I thought it was freaking hilarious. And this is all drawn in kitty cartoon style, too.
Oh, of course. Okay, so when did you first encounter Robotech? When it first aired?
Robotech, when it first came on, I guess that would have been, 82, 81, something like that.
85, actually.
Came on, I believe it came on Channel 11 in Dallas. Okay. It used to come on in the afternoons, and then switched to mornings. But I watched it, every time it was on, all the way through college. I remember, thinking, it was pretty cool. It was probably the best adaptation other than Star Blazers that I had ever seen at the time.
So, skipping ahead in years, when did you start working for Eternity Comics or Malibu Graphics?
Well, in 1992, my friend Tim Eldred, the author of Grease Monkey, which you may have seen, he was working out there at the time for Eternity Comics. This was before it was part of Malibu. Mm-hmm. And he gave me a freelance job. I was living in Dallas at the time. He gave me a freelance job at inking a book of his. And a few months later, he called me and said, well, if you want to move out here, we could use another graphic designer. And I was, hell yeah. So we moved out there and got a house in the valley. And this would have been in May 13th of 93 is when we left Dallas. And I went to work out there a few days after that. And a few weeks after that, they asked me at Mark Panicia, who's now over at, well, he's not at Marvel anymore, but he's pretty well known in the business now. He was actually the editor at Eternity at the time, and he asked me if I wanted to do a Robotech book, and I said yeah. And then Aftermath came out, let's see, that would have been fall of 93, I guess.
So that was basically it. They were, that's how you wound up taking over the Invid War cast?
Yeah, what happened was they were going through a real confusing time because the collector's boom had just started, and they were phasing out all their manga-related titles, because they didn't think that quote, bug-eyed Jap shit would ever sell. So they were starting up the Ultraverse line, and they had the license for Robotech that hadn't run out yet, and they had already had some time in the publishing schedule set aside for it, but nobody wanted to do it anymore, and so I said, well, hell, I'll do it. And so I did it.
Now, from what I remember at the time, you had said that you had a different proposal worked out before doing what turned into Aftermath, called Mega Road. Do you remember what that particular proposal was like?
It wasn't really, it never got to the proposal stage. It was just basically some ideas. I don't even remember it anymore. I originally wanted to do a comic version of, the Mega Road from Flashback 2012. I wanted to do, an original comic based on that, but apparently, they didn't like that idea for some reason, so it never happened. Which I think it would have been fun, but
oh, sure.
It worked out that way.
You seem to go at Invid War Aftermath with a number of, how shall we say, underlying agendas, from the overall aesthetic of the book to the messages, both political and philosophical.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you describe some of what you were trying to do with that book?
Well, at the time, most people, I don't talk about this a whole lot, but I have this disease called major depressive disorder. It's just basically clinical depression, but at the time it was untreated. And so I was a very deeply unhappy person back in those days. And, I got my jollies by pissing people off. I thought, that was cool. So one of the reasons I, was such a, back contour in that book is because it got me a lot of attention, which is what, depressed people want. It validates their existence. But another reason, and this I think was a legitimate reason, was that I wanted to do something different. I mean, something totally different with the Robotech, thing. Something more than what the other artists who were involved in the license were doing. The boobs and robots and spaceship kind of thing. I wanted to do something more like a soap opera, because I grew up. My favorite kind of manga was, besides the funny stuff, was shoujo manga. I always loved shoujo manga better than most of the guy stuff. And so I thought, it'd be fun to kind of do that with Robotech. And the political junk, at the time, like I said, I had this raging case of untreated depression. So, I was into all that socialism crap back then, and it was stupid, but, it was honest stupid. I wasn't, I honestly, sincerely believed that crazy shit back in those days. So, I wasn't, just doing it just to piss people off. It was for real, but I do regret it now.
And
it's hard to read now.
So looking back on it, do you think you were successful in any of or all of those ideas? Do you think you?
Well, it was my very first book, so I really didn't know what I was doing. But I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think just getting the book out in the business climate and the environment I had to work in at the time was a success, because not only was the atmosphere over at Malibu not real conducive to what I was doing, but we had an earthquake about that time, and we were struggling. Me and my wife, who had just gotten married at the time, were struggling to survive, and it was a constant day-to-day battle for existence. But the fact that the book came out on time, and it's still being talked about today, even in negative terms, I think that is a certain kind of success. I look back at the art, and some of it, some of it I'm more happy with than others. Most of it is cringeworthy, frankly. I'm not the greatest artist in the world, and the production values at the time aren't very high, but I did the best I could at the time. So I try not to feel too ashamed of it.
After Eternity was more or less disbanded, did you remain on at the larger company, or did you have to move on to something else?
Eternity got too big for, well, not Eternity, but Malibu got too big for its britches in late '93. Like a lot of companies at the time, they thought that the boom would go on forever, and so they opened up a movie division and a game division, and they bought, invested in a bunch of real estate and all kinds of things, and then all of a sudden, when the collector boom died out, oh well, what are we going to do? And what they ended up doing was hiring a hell of a lot of people. And I was one of those. They let me go, I think, in April of '94, right after the earth. No, it was before the earthquake. I can't remember exactly when it was. That was a long time ago. But what happened to Malibu, of course, was they got bought by Marvel and then shut down. And I think Marvel still owns all their copyrights today. I went back to the advertising business after that.
Now, you also wound up doing a few books for Academy Comics.
Oh, yeah, Academy. Yeah, I really liked working for them.
Okay. And who approached whom on that front?
Let me think. You'd probably be better asking Ricky and Tabby about that, because they, their brains are, fried out by years of bad chemicals, and they have a better memory about stuff like that than I do. It was either them. I can't remember if they approached me or I approached them. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think what happened was that Ricky and Tabby sold a book to them, and then they mentioned that the lady who was running Academy at the time was interested in doing some more titles, and so I think I wrote up a proposal and sold it. And if I remember correctly, that's how that whole thing got started. You definitely want to check with Ricky and Tabby, because I'm sure they remember exactly what happened.
And when you were doing the last few issues of Aftermath over at Academy, you seemed to have some long-term plans in place, and then the book just sort of went poof with that last issue.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling why that last book came out the way it did?
Here's why. I had a whole big story arc all planned out. I mean, it would have taken me a year or more to finish out. The moon princesses and all that. I was gonna flesh that whole storyline out. But what happened was Academy went broke, and they just informed me that they weren't going to be able to do the book anymore. And I was halfway through. I think it was issue 14, if I remember right. Of Aftermath, and I just thought, why should I kill myself doing this book when I can just sum it up in a few paragraphs and get out? At the time it seemed like the right thing to do, but I'm not sure I'd do it that way now.
Now, why do you think that the market a few years after really moved away from these books like the Robotech books, like the Captain Harlock book, and like the books that CPM was doing? You did like a Golf Force adaptation.
Wait, you're talking about CPM Comics?
Yeah, the CPM Comics. You did a Golf Force adaptation.
Oh yeah, we did that. Studio Go did comics for them for a few years.
Why do you think the market really moved away from that sort of material? Do you think that's because we're getting so much authentic manga over here, or was it just
I
not?
think that's part of it. I think, kids perceive the homegrown stuff, to be inferior quality, and a lot of it was. At the time, I'd have to probably agree with them. Most of it was. But, I don't think that was the reason they quit reading it. I think, one, comics readership in general pretty much dropped to the floor in those years, and two, I think that, when the company started bringing over the real thing, the kids wanted that. And people like CPM were like, well, why should we pay these bozos to, do, fake junk that doesn't sell when we can pay, just get some stuff that's already been published, have the film sent over, just run it off the press. From a business standpoint, I can't say they were wrong, frankly. But, at the time, OEL was just not considered viable in the U.S. market. We all got shown the door.
Along those lines, I remember seeing online a Big O thing that you did. What was that for?
Oh, yeah, that was a little fan story I did. You're talking about the thing with Dorothy and Roger Smith.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see if I can remember. That was so long ago. I believe I just did that for fun. Or maybe it was for I think it was for, Shonen Jump was trying to get, American artists to come over to Japan and do some work over there. I think that was something I had done it just for fun, and I had, sent it over to them as a sample. And, as far as I remember, that's what I did that for.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember, that was way back in the mid-'90s,
Wow. Aside from this work here, have you ever really tried your hand at making a living in comics, or?
Well, I did make a living in comics from '93 till about '96.
Okay.
I made a damn good living. I mean,
Really?
I made more money than I'd ever made in my life back in those days. Up until that point, I was raking it in. As a matter of fact, I made so much over such a short time that I couldn't afford to pay the taxes, and I was the IRS was chasing me around up until a couple of years ago, and until we finally paid them off for all the back taxes we owed. But it was great until the bottom fell out of the market, and then it was like, well, what do I do now? And since I had been working in the advertising business before, I just went back to that, and I kept doing my own thing, but there's just not enough money in the comic book business really to support family lifestyle, at least not the middle class way that we live. It's too uncertain.
Now, you have done recently a how to draw manga book.
That's right, draw manga.
Okay. Well, the obvious question is, why did you decide to do that project? Why did you think?
Well, what happened was Helen McCarthy, who's a well-known anime writer, had been my editor when I was a freelance magazine writer for Anime UK and Anime FX. And at the time, she had just written the Anime Encyclopedia. And she was over here visiting us one day, and she said, "Chris, you ought to write a book on how to draw because you have a real conversational style of writing." And I had never even thought about writing a book. I was like, well, geez, I don't know if I can do it. And she goes, well, why don't you write up a proposal and send it to me, and I'll take a look at it and see what I can say what I think. And I did. And she said, oh, yeah, you can sell this. And she put me in touch with an editor over at Collins and Brown Publishing. That's in London. And they liked the proposal and made me an offer. And in 2003, I signed the contract, and I delivered the book in late 2004, and it was published in 2005. Okay. And it's been pretty successful. It's actually about to make a profit for the company, which is very unusual for an art instructional book.
Wow, that's pretty good.
I saw it at the local library the other day, and I was so thrilled I took a picture of it. I mean, one of my childhood dreams was someday to go into a library and see a book with my name on it, and another childhood dream fulfilled.
Excellent, excellent. Any new comics work on the horizon?
Yeah, I've got several things going on right now. Of course, the environment today is much different. We have the internet now. We didn't have it back then. I occasionally do strips and illustrations and things online, but doing a webcomic is something I don't really have the time for right now. We published back in 2001 a comics album, sort of an anthology book It was 144 pages of original English manga. It was called Juku, a Comics album. And it was me and Dan Baker, Ed Hill, Shandel Minook, and David Merrill. And we published that back under our Cheap Disposable Entertainment imprint, and it did pretty well, actually. I saw it at a used bookstore the other day for something like $22, which is crazy. You know, you can buy a copy for me for $5, but you know, I guess somebody thought it was worth $22. And in that book is like a 24-page story by me called "It Happened in the 7th Grade," and there's also an 85 or 86-page manga in there by me called "Die Rooster 5," which is about a giant robot chicken fighting a Nazi hamburger robot.
Wow.
I had a lot of fun drawing that. Since then, I've mostly been involved as a writer and a voice actor in the past few years. I would like to do comics again, but until I can figure out how to make a living doing it, or at least make a decent amount of money doing it, I can't afford to.
Mm-hmm. You're doing voice acting, and what else?
I earn my living as a writer these days.
Okay.
I write. What I do is I do trend analyses and reports for a big Japanese corporation. I cover fashion, food and restaurants. I cover living, which is stuff like gadgets and personal electronics trends and things like that. These are all areas of business that I watch and do trends analyses on. I predict what's going to be popular in these fields, and then I write up reports for this big, gigantic Japanese corporation so that they can know what to buy for their stores in the months and years to come. I also I do other kinds of writing too. I want to write another book this year. I'm getting the proposal together ready right now. I wrote a comic book proposal last year that we actually sold to Tokyo Pop, but we couldn't sign the contract because they wouldn't. There were certain changes in the legalese that they wouldn't make, and on the advice of my legal counsel, we decided not to take their deal.
Okay.
But I'm getting together some more comics proposals this year that I'm going to start sending out here pretty soon, and a new book proposal that I'm going to probably do around the end of the year, which I hope I can sell because I'd like to write another book next year.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask about Tokyo Pop because I've noticed a few people who worked on stuff like Robotech back in the day have been doing books for them,
Ricky and Tabby do books for them.
Yeah. Swinging back around to the subject of Robotech, would you ever want to return to the Robotech property?
Well, I was talking to Tommy the other day, and it depends. I always liked Robotech. I was actually a Macross fan before Robotech came out, but I like Robotech too, for its own sake, not just because, the Japanese series that preceded it. And, I wouldn't mind working on Robotech again if the price was right, but there's so much work that goes into making a good comic book or manga that it would have to pay a hell of a lot better than it did back in those days for me to be able to take another gig, because now I have a family and bills to pay and stuff like that. Whereas back in those days, my wife and I could live on ramen and peanut butter or whatever if we had to. If Tommy came to me tomorrow and said, "Hey, you want to do another comic book?" and if the price was right, you bet I'd take it. I would like a chance to make up for a lot of the things I did back in the olden days that I think I did wrong or did poorly. I would like another shot at it. Especially if they gave me a free hand, if they, if I was allowed a certain amount of creative latitude, I'd really love to do it. A straight adaptation, like comic adaptation of an episode or a movie or something, I don't think I'd be interested in that. That would be kind of dull.
Have you seen the Shadow Chronicles animation?
Actually, I haven't. We just had our first child a couple, 4 or 5 months ago, and I'll be honest with you, since then I haven't had time to watch anything. I watched Haruhi Suzumiya on video, on the computer download, but other than that, I really haven't watched any anime. I was very excited when Shadow Chronicles came out. Tommy was all up on it, and he said it was going to be great, and I'm sure it is great. I just haven't seen it yet. I'd really like to, though, because it looks interesting. I understand Louis Nichols finally gets his chance to shine in the spotlight. So.
I suppose the last question I'll ask is, does the recent manga boom make you feel kind of vindicated in a way? After
It does, and I'll tell you why. I've been reading manga for a longer than most people in the business have even been alive, because I'm an old fart. And I always knew that manga was more than just, comic book crap. I always knew it had a little something that no other media could match. And when I went to work, back in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a time when I knew every anime and manga fan in Dallas. I mean, I knew them all by name because there were only maybe 20 or 30 of us. And, in those days we were, sort of like furries are today, we're the hated, weirdos that everyone else laughs at. And, we just endured it through all those years, because we knew that the stuff we were into was really great and it was going to be big someday. And we worked really hard to make it big. I mean, people don't realize, how much of the modern American manga and anime industry wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for the fandom back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, all the tape trading clubs and all the cons, those all turned into, the businesses that are, still in business today. And so, when I think about the fact that, one issue of something like Naruto manga outsells every American comic book to put together, it really does make me feel great. One time when I was at Malibu, I was doing Robotech at the time, and I had brought in a whole stack of finished art, and the pages were sitting there on my desk, and my art director, Jim Chadwick, was right behind me, and we were, yakking about something, and the publisher at Malibu at the time, I don't want to say his name, but we'll just call him Mr. X, he would go through the office and pick up things at random, and he would make comments on them and then walk away, and we all thought it was pretty funny, but that day he was stalking through the office, and he happened to come up on my desk, and he picked up all those Robotech pages and started flipping through them frantically, and after he looked through a few of them, he threw it all down on the table, and he said, "Are we still publishing this bug-eyed Jap shit?" And, of course, me and Jim laughed, even though I was kind of pissed off. I was like, hey, I'm sitting right here. But, nowadays, that bug-eyed Jap shit outsells every American comic book there is, and, Mr. X is probably selling oranges on, someplace out on the Ventura Freeway now. So all I have to say is, ha, Mr. X, who's laughing now? That would be me.
Actually, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. You're talking about, how instrumental the fandom was. And
oh, yeah.
I seem to recall you in an interview back in the old Aftermath days going off on a rant about how, fandom was poison or something. When did that attitude really turn around?
Okay, this is something I've been wanting to get off my chest for years. I completely retract and apologize for everything in that Matt A. Kudasai interview. It was just me being a smartass and being mentally ill, and I was wrong to be such a dick to people back in those days, and I feel bad about it now. And I'm just glad more of it didn't get into print because I was a really negative person back then. As far as fandom itself goes, I still don't have any use for fandom per se, but that's not to say, you gotta understand what I'm talking about when I say fandom. When I'm talking about fandom, what I'm talking about is people who have no other reason for living but their hobby. Whether it be, butterfly collecting or, hot rods or Robotech, Star Trek, you name it. It doesn't matter. It's the whole... At the time, there was a very real danger that anime was going to be, reduced to something like Star Trek fandom. A bunch of geeks running around in, dopey homemade uniforms, going nanu-nanu at each other or whatever. And, I just really did not want to see my beloved, anime and manga turned into some, horrible, jokey subculture. And so, that's, I still think that sort of behavior is negative and hurts more than helps. But at the time, I was just flat out mean. I mean, let's face it, I was just a dick. And, I feel bad about it now. And, for all those people who loyally bought my books, even though I was, a dick, all I can say is I'm sorry. And, wish there was some way I could make it up to you, but of course there isn't. So.
Well, I should probably, apologize to you because I'm the person who, got a transcription of that and put that out on the web, but...
Oh, no, I mean, there's no need to apologize. What I said. There's, I have nothing to hide. I mean, I wish I could unsay it, but of course I can't.
Yeah,
so, it's up to me to just live with the shame. And, that's one of the things I've had to learn the hard way in this life is that some things you can take back and some things you can't. And so you should always be very careful. I'm not saying you should be a wimp and never say your opinion, but what I am saying is that you should, I'm saying that you should always carefully choose, when to have your mouth open and when not to have it open, because, you may have an opinion, a strong opinion about something, but there's no guarantee that anybody cares. And, I found that it's very hard to make a fool out of yourself when your lips are pressed together. And since those days, I have learned to keep my lips pressed together on a more frequent basis.
All right. Well, I think that's all. So, Thank you for taking the time.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate you having me on, and if I can ever be of any service to you, or if you ever need any questions answered or comments made, just feel free to ring me up.
Now, I expect that those of you who know me well enough aren't surprised that I didn't get around to taking Mr. Lewis up on his offer. I wholeheartedly admit I'm an absolute failure when it comes to keeping in touch with people. The people who are still friends with me are the ones who make the effort to remind me, hey, I'm still here. Is there a reason you don't talk to me anymore? And yes, there is. That reason is I am really bad at being a person. No, the surprising thing is that just a little over a year ago, Bruce Lewis got in touch with me again, apparently forgetting the half-hour chat you just listened to, or maybe just not connecting the person who interviewed him in 2007 with the website that he'd happened across. Because the email he sent was about the last version of my old Robotech Comics website that's up on the internet, the Blogspot. The subject line of the email read, Invid War Aftermath, and when I received that email, I was unemployed and depressed, and knowing what I know about his own opinion of the work, I was in no state to read a dismissal of the comic. It came at a bad time for me, so I didn't open the email. I finally opened it this past Sunday afternoon, several hours after work. This is what Bruce Lewis had to say. Dear Mr. Switzer, I just came across your 2006 review of Invid War Aftermath, and I'd like to thank you for your fair-minded look at the series. I was just a kid when I did that book, and yes, I was a stupid communist as well. But I got over both illnesses in time. Unfortunately, the comics remain, and while I'll admit they were pretty awful, I'm glad to see that at least one person got what I was trying to do with the title. The creation of Aftermath was motivated more by my emotional reaction to the boobs and guns stuff the you-know-who brothers were cranking out at the time than by any other factor. Now, I like boobs and guns as much as the next guy, but the fact that the brothers got rave reviews for their juvenile crap created a great deal of anger in me towards Robotech fans. Aftermath was my attempt to drive the boobs and guns fans into a frenzy of rage by creating a Robotech story based upon everything but boobs and guns. Mission accomplished. I'm not proud of the Robotech comics I did way back then. Although I did the best I could on them at the time, my best just wasn't very good. I got better later. I learned a lot from doing them, though, and the storyline was solid, so I guess that wasn't all bad. I'm also not proud of the idiotic leftism I espoused at the time, nor of the cocky, arrogant tool that I was in those years. I'd like to blame it all on the roaring case of untreated clinical depression I was in those years, successfully treated since, but the truth is that I was, and am, not a particularly nice person. Anyway, thanks again for giving the books a fair look, and for giving me the chance to apologize to at least one Robotech fan. Sincerely, Bruce Lewis. It's a cliche, but it's said time and again for a reason. We always assume there will be tomorrow. We're stupid and hopeful that way. We don't expect that the person we're talking to today will get hit with a bus before the next time we'll get to catch up, and more on point, I didn't expect that a creator whose silly old comics I dearly loved, who I always hoped to see another book out of, would pass away from brain cancer before I could pull my stupid self together, read the damn email, and fire off a reply. I offer my deepest condolences to his family. And more than that, if you're listening to this during the summer of 2016, there's still a possibility that the GoFundMe page that was set up to help with Bruce Lewis's cancer treatment is still open. I'll be posting a link to that in the show notes on YouTube, and also when I post this thing to my blog and the This Robotech Thing Tumblr. I think that about wraps things up. So to Bruce Lewis, see you on the other side, sir. And to the rest of you, this is Captain JLS, signing off.